Welcome to the Thrive in Design podcast, the show for interior product brands ready to turn insight into action. I'm your host, Nicole Lashae Hall, founder of Thrive in Design. Each week, we explore how manufacturers, marketers, and sales leaders can align strategy, storytelling, and systems to drive real specification growth. This podcast is about moving beyond scattered marketing, outdated sales tactics, and visibility for visibility's sake, and into clarity, alignment, and momentum. Whether you're navigating change, scaling thoughtfully, or rethinking how your brand shows up in the design industry, you're in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Thrive in Design podcast. Today, I'm joined by Vitalia, also known as Vita Vygovska, founder and CEO of Vitalia Inc., a distinguished custom luxury window treatment atelier serving AD featured designers, renowned architects, and leading hospitality groups. Vita has built Vitalia Inc. into one of the nation's most prestigious ateliers by combining her artisan roots, MBA, and over a decade of corporate marketing expertise with a deeply personal, detail-driven approach to luxury interiors. Through her signature Vitalia Inc. approach, she and her team provide a comprehensive, turnkey experience from concept to installation, blending traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology to deliver window treatments that are both technically precise and magazine-worthy. Her work has been featured across award-winning projects, including Palm Beach Estates, Philadelphia and New York City penthouses, oceanfront villas, and boutique hospitality spaces. And beyond the beauty of the final result, Vita helps designers and clients protect the process, elevate the experience, and realize stronger margins along the way. In this conversation, we're talking about what designers often underestimate about custom window treatments, how a strategic vendor partner can protect both the project and profitability, and why the true luxury lives in the details most clients never see. So welcome to the show, Vita.
Oh, thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate the opportunity. And kudos on pronouncing my last name correctly.
Yes, I told you I have a lot of Eastern Europeans in my life, so I've had some practice.
That just rolled off your tongue. I love it.
So, Vita, for all of my guests, I love to get to your founder story, to share like how you got to be the amazing woman and entrepreneur and leader of this amazing luxury window treatment company that you are today. So before we get into all the nuts and bolts of your organization, share with us like when you first started building this company, what were you building towards and what led you to build the company that you did?
Yeah, that takes me way back. So the company is 20 years old now, and which is, hard to believe. It's like at a blink of an eye, all of a sudden 20 years go by. And I started it because I was really tired of corporate. Actually, I am a sort of corporate dropout. That's where I spent the first 10 years of my career. And there was just this itch, I guess, to pursue entrepreneurship, to be more in charge of your own fate, to be more productive with your time and your talents. And so I started looking for something to do on my own. And this opportunity fell on my lap. And it started as a small shop at home kind of window treatment business where I had fabric samples and roller shades and other shade samples in my very old 1998 Honda Accord. So
I love it.
I come from very humble beginnings in my business and in my life too. As you can probably tell, yes, the Eastern European origin, like you mentioned, I am originally from Ukraine. I came here when I was 15 years old. I have my bachelor's and master's here from the States and just, started working and pursuing the life of happiness and freedom and entrepreneurship here in America. And so fast forward to when I decided to start this business and this opportunity that fell in my lap, It was an interesting combination where I could use my fashion merchandising degree and the experience at Burlington Coat Factory as a buyer and schlepping up and down the streets of New York City and, knowing the garment district like the palm of my hand, and also the corporate experience as well, and the MBA and understanding all the business aspects of running the business. A lot of people come into this industry because they know how to sew and because a neighbor asked them to create a window treatment because they have done window treatments in their own home and they have a small workroom in their basement or garage and it is just a hobby for them. And it just sort of turned into a business kind of by happenstance. For me, as in many things in my life, it was very intentional, very thought through. It took me a few years to begin this business. And now, of course, everything that you've read in the bio, and you're so right, listening it, having be read to you and having that mirror put in front of you and realizing what 20 years have done, it's nice to hear, I could say.
Yes, and I always am so amazed by every guest that I have on the show because everybody starts different, right? And really almost everybody also starts with humble beginnings. For you, it was having samples in the back of your Honda Accord with a vision and the unction to really go after that vision and whatever it would become. And now, 20 years later, you never gave up. You kept going. You've had far larger orders than the $300 order that you got at first. And now you're even moving into the hospitality industry, which I'm super excited to be partnering with you on as well.
Same, Nicole, same. We're going to take this to next level for sure.
Yes, for those of you who are listening, Vita is one of my newest clients at Thrive in Design. And Vita is going to share a little bit during this podcast about what she has been doing in residential as well as boutique hospitality projects. And we're going to walk through that process. But I'm excited to work with Vitalia Inc. to really launch you guys even bigger in hospitality because it's going to be big. It's going to be huge. But before we get into talking about that, Vita, talk me more through like what it means to be an atelier, right? Right. You guys are not just a workroom. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But what does that
You're doing
mean?
great.
Walk us through your viewpoint, your process, your client experience.
Yeah, thank you for that. So there are various types of business models and setups for workrooms, shops, and ultimately ateliers. And ateliers, actually, it's a French name for a workroom, be that a drapery workroom or a clothing workroom. But it's also the next level of execution, the next level of attention to detail, and the elevated level of experience too. And so we're calling ourselves Atelier because we truly embody all of these values that I just spat out. What it means to us is that unlike other business models that are more of an assembly line, more of a track workroom that I call, we truly care about every single piece of material that crosses our tables and every piece of drape and every valance, every jabot. The more of an assembly line workrooms, they're amazing. And it is just an unbelievable caliber of business and unbelievable caliber of productivity and efficiency that this type of business model is able to achieve. There you have a person or several people who just do the cutting of the drape, and then a different person or a team that just does the tabling. And then yet a different team that does just the hemming and then the pleating. And then, so every single piece or stage of a drape or window treatment is done by a different person. And that's why it's more of an assembly line. It's incredibly efficient. And of course, with efficiency come economies of scale. And with that comes lower pricing. With more of an elevated atelier type of approach that we have our team touch the entire window treatment from the beginning to the end. So my team unrolls the fabric, then they table, then they hem, then they do all the things, and it is the same people that take it from very beginning to the very end. Now, one may ask, why is that so special?
Yeah.
And it's because when the same person takes it from beginning stages to the very end, there is a different kind of care that's applied to it. There's a different kind of attention to detail. And that different kind means more elevated kind. They really know what it takes to do the entire piece of window treatment, the entire valance or cornice or drapery or Roman shade, whatever it may be. And so because they have it's a special soulful in a way approach and something that they really take to heart, and they understand how the treatment behaves then when it's completely done. So somebody who may just be cutting the fabric may not understand that rings need to be sewn a certain way so that the Roman shade functions in a certain way and the rings don't fall out. Somebody who just does the pleating may not quite understand or care about, not because they don't care, but because it's just not a part of their purview and job description, that the fabric between the pleats needs to fold back ever so precisely so that the drape folds and hangs in the way that it doesn't flare. And so when you have the same person or the same set of people taking a window treatment from beginning to the end, there's just a different kind of attitude and understanding of how it needs to function, how it needs to drape, how it needs to lay, and ultimately translates to client satisfaction.
When pressure is high, the wrong decision is expensive. That's why the AI in Design Summit exists, to cut through the noise and give architecture and interior product brands practical, strategic guidance on how AI can actually support marketing, sales, product development, and leadership. No hype, no trend for trend's sake, just clarity. And when you're ready to apply that understanding to your own brand, Spec Ready helps you assess what's missing and what to fix first so you become easier to specify. Find clarity at tidsummit.com and direction at specready.co. I love how detailed you even explain that, because people need to hear like how hands-on that you all are and how much detail you are paying attention to so that ultimately you can deliver not only the best client experience, but also the best product when it gets installed. And I think that's super important, especially for hospitality designers to hear that are listening, or even purchasing agents, of why it's important to have attention to detail in design. So let's start with the hospitality designer. I want to stay there for a second. So as you know, Vita, I went to design school, interior design school. I went to Syracuse, and Syracuse is one of the top schools. But like most schools, it does not teach window treatments, right? They tell us, put it on the window, put it in your plans.
Do the little squirrely line on the
literally, that's all I
AutoCAD
know how to do.
plans.
That's all. That's all. And that's all most designers know how to do. And especially most designers that are the specifiers, that are calling the shots really on the specifications, especially in hospitality, are usually like millennial Gen Z, right? I'm right there
Yeah.
with them. If they're straight out of school, they're just putting that little squiggly line on their plans. They might be choosing a really good fabric, but it's important for them that are listening to know that even if you went to design school and you just know how to do that squiggly line on your plan and specify a really good fabric, it's really important to partner with an expert in window treatments that can be your partner in the design, that can help you with the specification, that will have that level of detail to bring your vision to life. Even if you just say, hey, here's the vision, you tell us, you tell us. And that's what I love about how you just described something. And then for the purchasing agent who is really just looking at like, we just need somebody to deliver to the site. We need to fit within the budget. For you to be handling like that level of care takes so much off of their plate to know like, hey, this is a trusted partner. We know that they will deliver and they don't have to worry about anything else, especially when there's probably like 100 other things in the spec for them to care about. So I wanted to take a pause to really like hone in on that for those who are listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because, I truly understand. And I think it may be coming from my corporate days too.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to get out of there, there's so many benefits of having had the corporate career. I truly understand that for a purchasing firm, they need the ultimate product to be worry-free. They need it to be stress-free. They need to be functional so that nothing goes wrong with it 2 or 3 years down the line. And I also get that they carry all the responsibility, but sometimes with minimal control. They can't control how a Roman shade operates. They can't control that a fabric is on back order. They can't control that somebody said they're going to do something and then they don't. And yet they get blamed for a lot of things. Sometimes also
Absolutely.
they carry the responsibility. So I really understand what a purchasing agent goes through. And similarly with the interior designer too, they have to specify everything. They have to make the space beautiful, but their job is so much more than making it pretty. There's so many technical specifications that they need to know. There's so many product lines that they need to know. And yes, window treatments is not something that's taught in school, and yet they are responsible for specifying it. And so that is exactly the sort of the cross section where Vitalia Inc. comes in and adds a lot of value, in that in both of these scenarios, we can educate the interior designer on the best way to write the spec. We can educate them on the best way to get the most out of this very complex category. And also, it's a very consequential category because it's expensive. And
Yeah.
so making the wrong decision in fabric or in hardware or in the type of treatment may ultimately be very expensive to correct later. And then on the purchasing side, we're often asked to help them value engineer something, a style or a hardware or another piece of window treatment. They ask us for options of how can we make it better or less expensive, or just really work with them on various aspects of it and sympathize with what their ultimate goal is, and then run it like a business, like in a corporate, and just really be good partners for them. Because we've been in business for such a long time and we truly have seen it all as it comes to window treatments, we know what questions to ask before that question is even on anybody's radar.
Now, I want to highlight what type of hospitality projects that you work on. Because when people hear hospitality, I think the number one category that they think of is like hotels, right? They might be thinking Marriott and Hilton and all these things, which are really amazing brands and, of course, have great projects. They're always opening up new locations or renovating. But what you guys do is very special, right? You really want to lean into boutique hospitality design. So, talk to me about some of the projects types within
Mhm.
hospitality that you've worked on and that you're looking to work on as you continue to grow in the hospitality space.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because we are not the right fit for the 100 plus rooms type of hotel or hospitality project. But the hotels where, we would normally stay, if we're going to just run of the mill conference, and, there's a window in the middle of the room and there's a sheer and an overdrape, and you just open and close it every morning and every night, where every single room is the same, where every window is the same. It is not the type of work that we want to be doing. And it is not where our talents are utilized the best. It's not where we can highlight the design and the purchasing agent the best. Where we do come in and where our value is are in those special projects where every room is different, where it is a small hotel of maybe 10 rooms, 15, 20, and maybe 5 rooms. And there is a canopy bed, and there is a bed skirt, and perhaps every window treatment is different. There's a cornice in one room and there's an interesting valance in another room, where there's swags and cascades, where true craftsmanship and artisan touch that's needed to make it happen. Sometimes there could be multiple fabrics applied to the same treatment. There could be trims, one trim or multiple trims applied to the treatment. So those types of boutique hotels is where we can really shine. Also, we've been involved in doing several restaurants as well, and that has been very gratifying and a lot of fun. We're actually in the process right now of working with a really big name here in the Philadelphia area. And one of the things that they want us to do is add embroidery to their window treatments. So
I love
how
that.
interesting is that, right? I mean, that is a huge step up from your run-of-the-mill shears and an overdrape. And
Yeah.
so with embroidery, we're part of that spec writing team with them where we decide, in addition, it's a scalloped edge too. So scallops are very big right now. I just did a whole class at International Window Coverings Association, and one of my classes was on window treatment trends, and that one of those trends is scallops. So
I love
there's a
that.
little tidbit. So scalloped edge is what this big restaurant in Philadelphia wants, and they want it embroidered along the scallop, and they also want to have embroidery on top of the scallop, and they want to have a little fish done at the end of each scallop. I mean, so how fun, first of
Yeah,
all. Second of all, how knowing the resources, knowing what a good quality looks like, and knowing how to work with those resources, knowing how to say that scallop needs to be of this size and the fish needs to be of that size, and the long point is this and the short point is that. And this is how it's going to wrap around the returns, and this is how we're going to finish it. And the best lining for something like this is XYZ, so that you can really see that embroidery and it's not going to get washed out in the window.
that's really exciting. I can't wait to see what that project turns out like and to find some really great projects for you guys to do work on. Now, one of the things too that we have talked about is that there are so many like stakeholders. It's touching the project, especially in hospitality. And I just want to take a moment to say like the main two groups that we've talked about in this process during our conversation right now is the designer who is really looking for that help in the specification process so that you can educate them for their spec so that, their vision comes to life in a beautiful, dynamic way. The second stakeholder that we talked about was the purchasing agent and how they're really looking for a trusted partner that they can say, you know what, Vita, we trust you to bring this to life. You guys are not the track workroom, but you guys are going to do something special and it's going to be worth the cost. But there's also other people in a project, right? There's your GC. There's sometimes the electrician and probably a million other people that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But walk me through, or even just summarize what that looks like for you guys as you are navigating all of those different parts of a project. How do you bring value through your approach?
Yeah. I have a great story for this because we had just finished an installation at a college. The college was in Michigan, and we were engaged by a local designer, and she was engaged by this college in Michigan State. And it was a new addition to an existing building with 7 very long windows that also had an arch at the top. And the room was going to be used as a lecture room, but also as special events room too. So it needed to be either super light or also have the ability to be super dark and also have that aesthetic appeal as well. And so the designer specified these really pretty swag valances with long jabots. And also, we worked through with her on the type of roller shade that would be best to meet those functionality requirements. And because those windows are so tall and because there's an arch there too, a manual roller shade was out of the question. So here we had to make those shades automated. Now, how do you make a shade automated? You can do it with either a battery or you can have it hardwired to the main electrical source. And of course, this being the type of project that it is, nobody's going to be climbing 16 feet to change out the battery. So of course,
unless they like have Cirque du Soleil working for them for at the college.
So we had to work very closely with the general contractor and his electricians to make sure that our motor specification worked with all the wiring that they were running in the building. We also had to make sure that the power panel had a place to live. So there's some coordination that had to happen there. There was a lot of coordination on the type of wiring that needed to be run from the power panel to our shades to make sure that the motors were responding properly and were functioning properly. And there's a lot of coordination on the control switches. So is it a wired control switch? Is it a wireless control switch? And if it's wired, what kind of wiring? And if it's wired, is there still time to wire it? And have the walls been closed up at that point? And maybe we needed to pivot to the wireless switch. Well, if we pivoted to the wireless switch, then the motor has to change
Oh my
because the
goodness.
wireless switches don't talk to the same motors they were originally specified. Well, if that's the case, then that motor actually has higher, larger tube, so higher diameter tube. Well, the projection, the depth of the window wasn't all that deep. And so the larger diameter tube all of a sudden is not fitting into the window. There is no place to actually attach the bracket into
Oh
the
my
window
goodness.
to house that tube. Yes. And so I can go on and on. The point is that the details are sometimes overwhelming. And if you change one detail, then there's like a domino effect of all the other things changing. And then you go through this process of figuring it all out and you get to a kind of a stopping point. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. Something happened. We have to pivot. As we're pivoting, then all the details that you think you've worked through all of a sudden need to be changed up again. So that takes a lot of knowledge on our part, a lot of coordination on our part between us and electricians and GCs and, everybody who's involved. And again, it's asking the questions that either nobody knows how to ask or what to ask, but doesn't even know that it's a potential problem. I mean, who would have known that just because we pivoted to wireless switch, it's going to create this domino effect of 5 other things that then ultimately needed to be switched out.
Yeah. And I love that you're taking into the account. Like, I feel like in business or even just running a team, when one small thing happens,
Mm-hmm.
it probably changes 10 other things that affects all the other people on my team. And the same goes for window treatment. So I imagine that if somebody is working on a project, they can now visualize, okay, well, yeah, I manage a team or I work in a team. So if I'm changing something, it affects my other teammates. Same thing goes for your window treatments or your drapery. If you're changing one small thing, there's going to be effects of the electrical and the and maybe the drywall and all the other things. But even if they're not thinking about that, they have a partner with Vitalia Inc. to be thinking about those things in advance so that the end result gets there, which I love.
That's where they bring us into the fold because we think through all of that.
Absolutely. I couldn't even imagine, like, Vita, we've talked multiple times at this point, and even in this conversation, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's even way more details than I ever thought. So I'm going to be a window treatment atelier after after we work together as well.
You're going to be a specialist for sure.
Absolutely. So, Vita, for designers, architects, or purchasing teams listening, what should they bring to a window treatment partner in the conversation earlier? And what changes when they do bring certain information?
Mm, that is such a good question because it is so often that the window treatments are sometimes, I said often, but I just, that we just oftentimes, okay, so oftentimes the window treatments are, they make the room, they change the feeling of the room, and they certainly have the functionality of be that privacy or light control or glare or just changing how the room looks and how the client or how the customer and the guest feels in the room. And so they cannot, and I should say, like I mentioned earlier, they're financially consequential. So
Mhm.
it's often that the designers and the purchasing agents are surprised by how much window treatments, how much of their budget they eat up. And so for both of those reasons, it's important to think about the window coverings early in the process, as early as possible. And so not even just for budgeting reasons, and also because of those electrical specifications like we were talking about a little bit earlier. Another reason to think about window treatments early on is oftentimes there's a pocket that is being specified where to house a window treatment so that the hardware is not visible or that the window treatment can potentially disappear if it's a horizontal type of treatment. And so the specification of the pocket oftentimes is left to us, or the designer and GC, they come to us and they verify the depth of the pocket, the length of the pocket. And then, of course, we ask a whole bunch of questions. Well, how many layers do you have? What kind of fullness of the drape you're thinking? What kind of pleat do you want to have? So none of these questions, like what does the type of fabric have to do with the depth of the pocket?
Yeah.
Well, it does, because a loosely woven linen is going to have a certain depth of stack, and a really tightly woven jacquard will have a much thicker stack. And so the pocket then differs. If you don't want that drape to flare at the bottom and ultimately affect your furniture, or maybe affect the positioning of restaurant tables, if you don't want that drape to flare out, to stack too thick, then you have to make sure that the pocket at the top is done with the proper depth and the proper length to be able to house the type of fabrics that the designer is specifying. And conversely, if we say, oh my gosh, your pocket, if you're looking at these really thick fabrics, your pocket needs to be 12 inches. Well, the GC may come back and say, I don't have 12 inches to give you because there's beams and there's structural elements and there's maybe electrical going, maybe there's vents and there's all sorts of mechanical things that are happening. They can say the most we can give is 8 inches. This is where we come in and we can say, if we only have 8 inches, Mrs. Designer, you cannot specify a taffeta, or you cannot specify a jacquard or a printed type of fabric. You really need to go for something much thinner. And oftentimes we would request a sample or even multiple yards of fabric so that we can create a little sample, or we can see how that yard fabric drapes and ultimately foresee how it's going to drape all the way to the bottom.
So ultimately, really, all the designers need to be thinking about their window treatments, draperies much earlier than the process, right? Much more complex than the squiggly line on their plan. So if they're bringing you in on the front end, right, it probably will meet their design intent a little bit better. It might meet the budget a little bit better. So you're not coming in at the purchasing side trying to figure out all the things. Now you can, but we want people to bring you in as early as possible, right?
100%. Yes, of course. There's no question. Of course, we can turn a spec into a budget line. But if that budget is too high, then it would have been a lot better to bring us early on. We would have told you that to specify Roman shades on these 50 windows is going to cost you twice as much as if you were to specify draperies, for example. Yeah. Or you are telling us you've already purchased the fabrics, or these fabrics are, let's say, spec'd and there's no way going back, but that pocket is only 8 inches, then there's no way you can have 2 layers of fabric. So half of the fabric that you spec'd is useless. So yes, the earlier we work best when we are a partner together with the designer, together with the purchasing firm, together with the GC. So if we all work in that kind of collaborative environment, that is ultimately what will bring the best result. That will cut down on costs, that will cut down on mistakes, and will cut down on time wasted.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great note to wrap up on. Vita, you shared a lot today that I even might need to make a glossary for some of the window treatment terms to share with the designers, to share with the purchasing agents that are listening. But I hope that all of you that are listening really understand the value of having a window treatment partner that is paying attention to the detail, that want to create beautiful outcomes for special and boutique hospitality spaces, whether that be hotels, restaurants, or anything in between. So Vita, for those who are listening that want to get in contact with you, we will share your information in the show notes, but you can also let them know right now how they can find more about Vitalia Inc.
I would love for you guys to come visit us on our website. There's lots of great photos and additional eye candy, and that is vitaliainc.com. We're also very active on Instagram, where we show some of the behind the scenes. And we have a monthly newsletter called Behind the Curtain, where we literally take you behind the curtain of some of our projects, where you don't just see the final result that looks easy and effortless and beautiful, but we kind of walk you through some of the challenges that happen along the way and how we ultimately overcame them.
Awesome. Well, Vita, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. I look forward to continuing to work together and can't wait to get the message out about Vitalia Inc.
Same, Nicole. I can't wait to see what the next year brings us together.
And with that, we're closing out this season of the Thrive in Design podcast. If you've been listening week after week, thank you. I'm so grateful that you've made the space for these conversations designed to help interior product brands, manufacturers, reps, and design industry leaders think more strategically about growth, marketing, sales alignment, and what it really takes to become specified. While we won't be back next week with a new episode, this isn't the end of the conversation. If something from this season sparked an idea, challenged the way you're showing up in the market, or made you realize it's time to get more intentional about your brand strategy, your messaging, or your path to specification, I'd love to invite you to take the next step with Thrive in Design. Visit thriveindesign.co to learn more about our consulting, strategy, and implementation support for interior product brands ready to grow with clarity, confidence, and intention. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you'll be the first to know when the next season launches. Thank you again for being a part of the season. Until we're back in your earbuds, keep showing up strategically, keep telling the story behind your products, and keep building a brand that's positioned to be specified. I'm Nicole, and this has been the Thrive in Design podcast.